You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode 59. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
a movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this. Good morning, Amplifiers. Bree Seeley here, and
Thais Guy. Happy Monday. It is not Monday for me, but it is Monday for you. It's kind of like we live like in a time warp situation.
We're always coming at you from the past.
It's like time is an illusion.
Well, it is an illusion. It doesn't actually exist.
It feels like, when John Oliver or, any of the late night guys go on, they're like, well, we recorded this earlier, so we don't know if the world is dead by now. If it's dead.
That's funny. So one quick announcement, as we always do, inviting you to come join us in person. We are having an event next week in Los Angeles at the Grove with Michael Kors. There will be shopping, there will be champagne, there will be all sorts of snacks and treats and amazing women and hugs.
Yes. And gosh, what else can I add about that? It's going to be amazing.
Get tickets. That's what you can add.
Get tickets now, ASAP, for the event. We're really looking forward to it. And Michael Kors is donating 10% of the proceeds.
Yeah. So come shop.
Purchases that you make. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you can get tickets as usual on theamplifycollective.com. Click on the events tab and it will take you to the correct place to join us and get on the guest list.
Yes. So we have a really incredible guest today. Moll is doing really fun work in the world with color. And we are going to dive into that conversation a little bit later. But something that she shares very vulnerably with us is on the conversation of grief. So Bree and I wanted to spend some time talking about grief before we bring her on.
Let's do it. What do you got? Am I starting? Are you starting? Who's starting?
I guess I could start. So grief sucks. We all grieve. We all have reasons to grieve. In this very human, messy life of ours, grief is a very natural and normal state. People die. We get sick. People we love get sick. We lose things. We break things. We lose relationships. I mean, gosh, there's just so many things that kind of go unexpectedly as we navigate life. And grief is such an important emotion that allows us to rinse and release, and it helps us step into a place of letting go. Too often the logical mind wants us to let go first. Maybe then you'll grieve some other point in the future. But what I found is that when we can really hold space for our grief, it actually teaches our body, teaches our mind to let go gently, depending on who or what the circumstances. So grief is important. It's important to grieve. It's important to know how to grieve. It's important to, be tender with our grief and to not really have an expectation on time with grief. I feel like we often expect ourselves to move through grief at a specific amount of time, but grief comes in waves, and we really can't predict it.
And I think grief is kind of a lifelong thing. There's experiences that I've had 20 years later with my dad's passing that it just hits me from out of nowhere. And it's those unexpected moments that pop up that that very well could stay with you for the rest of your life. And for me, it's just been really important to remain open to that and allowing that to have a space in my life, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. And I've actually found, in the past, it's been much easier for me to think that it's better not to grieve in the moment.
Yeah.
especially, especially with my dad's passing, he's been the only close person, and he wasn't even that close to me, that I've known that has passed. And I didn't know how to do anything about it or process it. And so I was like, well, then I just won't. And I hit pause on it, and didn't really start even looking at how sad I was about the experience until, I don't know, 7 or 8 years later.
Mm,
Um, and I think that's one thing that I hear a lot about grief, is that people don't know how to grieve.
yeah,
It's not talked about. People don't. People just don't know how. Like,
yeah,
how do you grieve?
yeah.
Is there a
So
right way? Is there a wrong way?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Do I
yeah,
hold everything in? Do I allow myself to be a complete hot fucking mess? And I think the thing to remember, of course, is that there never is a right way for anything. There's
yeah.
only your way.
And I think, yeah, the one of the large reasons why grief is so hard is because we're not seeing how it is done. When we don't see our elders grieve, we don't see, when we attend a funeral, everyone is very held in. um and back in the olden days, back in the olden days, 5 years ago, no, like back in the day, hundreds of years ago, the way that we moved through a funeral was by women would just throw their bodies and just release it and let it go, and it's this emotional experience, and yelling and crying and hitting and fighting and releasing, and that is just so necessary for grieving. But now we go to a funeral, everyone is stoic, trying to hold
Somber.
tears back, so yeah, somber, and not really having a container to allow any expression of grief. So then no wonder we don't know. My partner, he's Jewish, and I've been in a few years ago, someone very close to him passed away, and so I saw how his family and how he navigated grief in the Jewish tradition. And it's really, really beautiful how they honor grief and how they hold space for grief. And something that they do is that, for a certain amount of time, the direct family members of the person who passed away are not allowed to lift a finger. They're not allowed to do a single thing. They're not allowed to go to work. They're not allowed to clean a house. They are not allowed to cook for themselves. Everybody else, the outside members of the family, are the ones that are responsible for taking care of them and feeding them and cleaning up after them, and their whole responsibility, the only thing that they're responsible for doing for that set amount of days, I think it's 7 or 14, or maybe it's longer, but the only thing that you're supposed to do during that time is grieve. And I just love that so much, that tradition really honors that we need a period of that. But it's easier to see it when it comes to death, right? But we don't make space to grieve when it comes to things that aren't quite as extreme as death, or different types of death, like death of a project that you've worked so hard on, and then you realize, it's no longer really aligned with your work or whatever, and you have to let that go. Or the death of, you lost something that was very near and dear to you, you broke a computer, whatever. It's like there's tiny moments of grief that can come up, uh, and if we don't make space for those as well, how are we supposed to move forward into something new? I think we live in a culture of replace. We lose a
Well,
friendship, we replace it with another. We lose a
and
computer, we go
distract.
buy another. Yeah, yeah. So we are just constantly trying to fill the hole, and so I think death teaches us that there are some holes that we can't fill, and
And that
um,
that's okay too.
and I think that there's something really holy in death for many, many reasons. But I
Yeah.
think that we should honor death more often, but we don't. Again, look at how we treat the elders in our culture. We tuck them away in fucking nursing homes. We put them away. They're no longer productive, so we don't even look at them. They're a nuisance to society. We can't even like acknowledge them because they're like fucking useless. Um, and look at how that's changed, right? Look at indigenous cultures and how they treat their elders. The elders are the wise beings of the culture, of the tribe, of the community, and they treat them as such, and they're honored and revered. They're not put away in a nursing home. So it's clearly indicative that we live in a culture of new, 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 and death is bad, and we have to replace and
Have
distract.
have you heard though, and I'm not fully knowledgeable on this, I feel like if you've heard of it, you would be more, but, there's a new anti-aging campaign coming out
Mm.
that one of the makeup or, skincare companies or whatever is replacing the term anti-aging because
Oh,
it, uh, it basically teaches us that aging is bad.
yes.
And so, my intern was just telling me about it. I think it has to do with Glamour magazine. And, anyways, so there's this whole movement that's going to be coming out in the next few months, probably very publicly in the news
Well,
about,
let's be real here. The movement's always been there to
well, yeah,
respect our elders. This company is just choosing to capitalize it for their own marketing gains. I mean, as much as we can say that, these companies are doing great things like Dove and their campaigns of, women's
real beauty.
empowerment, at the end of the day, they're just capitalizing on what they feel will get people to buy their products. It's great.
Yes,
It's
and
innovative because it spreads the message. I get it. It's not all bad or good. It does spread the message, and I think it's an important message, which is
that's what people look to for their truth. They look
yeah,
to
that's
fashion
sad.
magazines, they look at
Yeah.
billboards, they look at movies and,
Well, we can't
celebrities
not look.
like that.
It's everywhere.
Exactly,
We're
especially in
fucking
LA. Go
yeah.
down a street that doesn't have a billboard up, I dare you, find one.
I know. I know. No,
Not including the Hollywood Hills.
I open my window and I see a billboard right there. They're
Yep,
everywhere.
yep.
So, but yeah, yeah. So the point is, there are so many deaths. Buddha says, a thousand joys and a thousand sorrows is the human existence, and there's death everywhere. And I think instead of running away from it, it's time that we redefine our relationship with grief and with death. And the cliche but very real statement is we can't really live until we fully embrace death. Another Buddhist story, there's a monk who carries around a mug, and it's his favorite mug. This is the mug that he's always seen carrying. And his followers are like, they're like, well, what the fuck? Like, you preach like non-attachment and everything dies, and that, so how are you here, always carrying this specific mug? And he goes, every time I go to pick up this mug, I imagine it dropping and I imagine it breaking and I mourn for its break. And then I celebrate that it is not broken. And that's really true unattachment, right? That he knows that this can go at any moment. And because he lives with that truth, that this can literally break at any moment, he gets to enjoy it and accept it in such a deeper way. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
If only we could all live our lives that way.
I feel like I've had to kind of go through a little bit of that with Oliver this year
Oh,
and, like,
yeah.
really,
That's her cat,
um
BT Dubs.
yeah, so my cat had bladder surgery in January, and I went through it was like a whole 6-week process where even after the surgery, I was convinced she was dying, and even before I went to Seattle, in June, I was convinced she was dying because she wasn't eating and not going to the bathroom and all sorts of stuff, and, I have definitely had to go into the place of, being accepting of losing her. And
Mhm.
being accepting, and I've already made the decision. If she gets bladder stones again, I am putting her down. And I've already come to that conclusion so that I don't have to make that decision in the moment. Um, but yeah, it's been a journey this year of coming to peace with the idea of losing something that's been my heart and soul for 11 years.
Yeah.
But one other thing we wanted to address in this conversation is, Moll is doing this really cool thing with using color to help people process their trauma and their grief in their life. And so I wanted to kind of open up the floor and talk about how what a cool time that we live in that we get to tap into and access so many different kinds of ways to process our grief and to process our hurt and to process our wounds. Because, for so long, the only acceptable modality has been therapy.
Well,
And
that even hasn't really been acceptable.
well, yeah, yeah, I guess there's a lot of stigmas around that too. But, that not everyone's ready for that. Like, not everyone's ready for the deep, deep, deep soul inner work in processing what they've experienced in their life, and that's okay. And so, what I love about this conversation that we'll have is that there are so many different options available to you. You know, if you feel like you're not ready for one thing, how can you even just open a sliver of something, be it through color therapy or Reiki or acupuncture or, whatever it is that's calling to you that feels safe to you? Because if you're going into some sort of healing process feeling unsafe, it's likely that the healing probably isn't going to occur.
Yeah. I
Um,
would also like to say, just real quick about therapy and healing work is that if you're working with the right therapist and the right healer, right coach, or whoever, they're never going to take you beyond what you're capable of going. That's a sign of a good therapist. So if you're worried about going too far, going too deep, not knowing where to start, you know, you'll be amazed at how gentle the practices and how slow it's taken me 10 years to get to where I'm at using the same person. So it's not that certain therapists or certain healing modalities are going to take you there faster. The reason why healing modalities work is because they are meant to address you exactly where you are and take you to the depth that you're ready to handle in that moment. And I think that's important to know because so often there is a stigma of therapy. There is a stigma of what that means about you. There is a stigma that, it's all woo woo or frou frou or all whatever. But it's actually really, really incredible the capacity that these modalities have to offer, no matter where you are.
yeah, that's a
So
beautiful point.
yeah, just felt needed to say that. But yeah, yeah. I mean, gosh, let's see. I mean, I started with my spiritual therapist 10 years ago, right off the bat, um, because that's where I was at. I had just experienced my first couple bouts of binge eating, and my mom was like, "Do you want someone? I'll pay for it." And I was like, "Yes," and that's how that started. And it's taken me a few other modalities for me to obviously get to where I'm at. It's not always just one path. Yoga has been a tremendous help for me. Um, and so has doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of research, going to a lot of different types of experiences, like fun things like sound bath healing, and fun things to just get me out of my comfort zone and help me bring that back to the work that I do with my therapist and say, so I had this experience, and then we get to dive even deeper in our one-on-one work.
Yeah. And remembering too that any of the treatment modalities that you choose to proceed forward with is not what's healing you. They're just tools. So whether it be a therapist or a coach or a sound bath or a Reiki healer or whatever, it's not the healing isn't about the thing. It's not about them. The healing's about you.
Hmm.
And you're being open and willing to process whatever comes up in the moment. I see with the coaching industry so often people give their power away in that
Yes.
sense. And
Yeah.
so it's not, yes, there's great Reiki providers out there and great acupuncturists out there and all these things, but if you weren't at a place to receive the healing in the first place, it wouldn't matter who was practicing on you.
Yeah. And just add another nuance that just came into my head. No one needs to be healed because you are not inherently broken, right? Like there's nothing that needs to be, healing. The same thing as like transformation. Like, look, this life changing program. This is going to change your life. Why does your life need to be changed so bad? You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong, broken that needs to be fixed about you. And so when you go into these modalities with that in mind, you're going to find some really good shit. But if you go into this place feeling like you are deeply broken and you need to be healed and someone else is going to heal you, then that's what happens, right? That Bree is talking about, where you lose your power and you give your power away to other people. So we're talking about healing modalities, but let's add just that little bit of reminder that it's called healing modalities, it's called healing practices, but y- there's no destination, people. Like where do you think we're gonna go? Like that's what I'm so like. Where are we going? We're just rushing to our deaths, and then what? We're gonna be reincarnated? Like what does that even mean? Like yes, we all love the idea of reincarnation and past lives, but bitch, please. Like, most of us don't remember our past lives, and we're not going to remember this life. So, even if we do reincarnate, whatever that looks like, no matter what happens in the afterlife, you're probably not going to remember this one. So, why don't we like spend time really like honing in on like this stuff, right? Instead of like trying to run to some sort of fixed state where
Yeah.
then everything will be happy and you will never grieve again.
Yeah, I mean, I've really,
Let's just
especially
add
this year,
that.
I mean, I've been playing, I love the idea of playing with the full depth of the human experience. And that's really been a theme in my life this year is fully allowing myself to experience the joys and the excitements and the celebrations, and fully allowing myself to experience the sorrow and the grief, and, you know, possibly having to administer a lethal injection of something to my cat, and,
Well, you're not
like,
going to administer it, but
no, but I'd have to hold her little paw while they do it.
well, you don't technically have to do that either. But
I would have to be in the room. I can't abandon my
I'm
baby.
just saying, I know. I
Um,
mean, my family's dog went down this year.
yeah,
I know a thing or two.
yeah. And, I we like to label and judge that as, like, bad experiences, bad emotions, bad
Yeah.
this, bad that, and just remember, every situation is neutral until we put our expectations on it, and so why is grief bad? Why is loss bad? It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's just another experience that we get to add to our repertoire of things we did while we were human.
I don't know.
And,
I actually think that the most tremendous stuff comes from being in deep grieving. Like, I think when you're most broken is when the most divine things can come through and come out. And I've seen that to be true in my life so many times, where when I was grieving, wrenching my heart open, lamenting, screaming, yelling at God, why, breaking down on my knees, that's when I got it. That's what I got, the it, whatever that it was of that time. I love Rob Bell. I love his work. He has an incredible, like, I think it's like a four-part podcast episode called Lamentations, and it's so good. There's a whole part of the Bible that's about lamenting and lamentations, and I literally know nothing about it, but he dissects it from in a very beautiful way, and he talks about it like, gotta let it out. Gotta let it out. So, whatever you're listening here, whatever healing modality you need to go to that's gonna allow you to let the fuck out, let it grieve, and get into containers, other people's containers that are gonna be able to hold space for your grief. Whoever that is, choose wisely, but then surrender it all. Give it your all. God, the most incredible things can happen. Grief is
um,
not bad. Grief is a blessing.
to give a visual to, what Thais just said about being broken open, it's like when those cracks form within you, when we allow our shell to break, when we're in that place of like really feeling broken and really feeling down, it's in those cracks that, God is allowed he's allowed to slip in. And we walk around so often with these shells of like keeping everything out. And um, so being broken is actually a really good thing because it allows God to come in
Well,
and
God's
give us
always
comfort.
in, yeah?
Well,
It just
yes,
we get out of the way.
we are often not open to God coming
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
We walk around with these walls and these fortresses and all these things, and we don't allow it. And by breaking down, yeah, I believe that we don't have to suffer to learn, but that's how most of us do, is by being in that state of pain, by being in that state of brokenness, that cracked shell, that things really allow us to transform.
yeah. Well, the Buddha says suffering is inevitable. It is a part of the human incarnation. And so we might as well learn how to navigate it. And he didn't mean that like life's gonna suck and you have no choice. He gives tools to how to like not suffer as much. But I think ultimately what he meant by that is things are going to happen that are totally outside of your control that are going to wreck you. And you get to decide how you're going to navigate that. You know, it's like you get to decide every time a wave hits you what you're making that mean about you. And really giving yourself space to grieve is a part of that process.
Yeah.
It's what the shedding is. Grieving is shedding. Oh, wow, this has been a real uplifting conversation.
Maybe we should close this section on a high note. Do we wanna close it on a high note?
No, I think people can handle it.
Well, and the second half of the conversation, we get pretty deep into color, which is pretty
Which
exciting.
is fun. Yeah. We
So,
have fun.
yeah, yeah. All right, amplifiers, enjoy Moll's interview and, find us on social media. Come clink glasses with us next week in LA and yeah.
Let's do this.
Oh, hey, amplifiers. Do we have a wonderful guest for you today?
You realize, Brie, that you start every single guest interview
I know, but
literally the same thing.
we only have good people on our podcast. Like
I mean,
it's pretty true.
that is true, but you start with the same intonation, with the same words. It's basically like the same thing. It's fine. We can be like John Oliver, how he starts his TV show like the same way at the beginning. We'll just be like that. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
So let me tell everyone about Miss Moll Anderson before we get started. So Moll Anderson is an accomplished author, television and radio host, inspirational interior designer, lifestylist, and advocate for women and children globally. Her career has been filled with many professional achievements, including winning an Emmy, being chosen as one of Donna Karen's Women Who Inspire, and a 3-time recipient of the Gracie Awards. Moll is a woman of many trades. Her lifestyle and interior design acumen have been enthusiastically embraced by readers of her 4 home and lifestyle books. She's a regular contributor to the Doctors TV show and a guest co-host on Fab Life, and she has appeared on numerous other television shows. She's also been featured in Style, Cosmopolitan, USA Today, and along with her professional work, Moll is a dedicated philanthropist focusing her energy on many deserving causes. She's an advocate for survivors of abuse, and she commits her time and resources to improving and protecting the lives of women and children in her community and internationally through her work with such organizations as Habitat for Humanity, Boys and Girls Club, and UNICEF. Moll splits her time between Dallas, Texas, and Knoxville, Tennessee, with her husband Charlie and their 2 Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, Winston and Harlow. We love puppies.
We do.
Welcome.
Well, there's actually been a third added to that since you read this, so I'll tell you about that later.
What's the third one's name? Winston, Harlow, and
Lulabelle.
Lulabelle.
I've been talking to my partner about getting a second dog, and when I said that to Bree, she looks at me like, "You're getting a second dog?" I'm like, "Don't act like it's such a big, outrageous idea, okay?" She has 2 cats.
Hey, a second dog is one thing. A third dog is a whole nother energy that I don't think my husband and I were even prepared for.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
But it was an emergency though, so I'll tell you more about that after. Oh my goodness.
I love it. Well, let's start by asking you, what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
Well, first of all, let me say I think everyone should start their day by having you guys read their bio. So when you're really feeling down and out and wiped out and exhausted, you go, oh, wait, okay, good. I can just lay off today and kick back and put my feet up and enjoy the ocean because I'm supposed to be on vacation. But when you guys read that, I think it's so nice to just kind of those little reminders to allow yourself to let go. So thank you for that permission today.
You are welcome.
You are welcome. And that is a service that Thais and I will consider incorporating into the Amplify Collective. People can just pay us.
Honestly, it's a great thing. It's like going and getting, validation for parking. Only I think that they should add, by the way, you look wonderful today. Or, oh, thank you so much for smiling so big because it just made my day. You just radiate life and love. You know what I mean?
I mean, we pay enough for valet. They should validate us as well.
I know. It should be what it really means.
I think we should be pricing it at like probably like $1,000, maybe $2,000 for the 5-minute bio. I think that seems like a fair.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I tell you, starting my amplified life, I have to tell you, you've gotten me in a very real and precarious state of mind. And I have to tell you, my normal amplified day of how I would start would be jumping out of bed, exercising, getting my senses all, in my ducks in a row, as far as, okay, I've got my flowers going, my house looks great, I'm dressed for my day, the dogs are good, and I start my day. Well, last week when I was in the middle of my book tour on, I think it was, well, almost 3 weeks ago, March 17th, I got a phone call that my mother had fallen for the second time. And I went from a fabulous blogger lunch, a TV morning show before that, and Neiman's gave me a cocktail party too. I thought I was going to see that my mom was okay, and that nothing was wrong, but in fact, she had taken a turn for the worse. And the next day, I went into hospice with her, and I led hospice until the 24th of May when my mom passed away.
Mm.
So it was a different kind of thing. I will not lie to you. I can't pretend that I'm not in a different state right now. But I will
Mm.
tell you that when I thought about that question about being amplified, I thought, well, today more than ever, I had to kick myself in the butt and pick myself up by my big girl panties, you know? I really did.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Well, I think that, I was in Target the other day, and I had to go pick something up, and it was actually before my mom had passed. I went to go get some nightgowns that zipped or buttoned or something, and I'm standing in line. I'm looking at all these people in line. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm that girl today. I am that girl in line who they don't know what's going on in my life." And they have no idea that my mom is fighting for her life, and I'm going to look at everybody differently when I stand in line at the grocery store or anywhere. And I'm always going to say to myself, I hope that whatever they're going through, it's not painful, or if it is, I pray for a special blessing on them, because it's so interesting to be in the moment and aware, and to realize that you're that girl at that moment. And it was
Mhm.
so profound for me.
Yeah, I feel like death reminds us so much of our humanity and of how short the stuff is. And it immediately brings us back to our values, our why,
Hmm.
our what's important to us and what's not.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, it's a good reminder because, my mom lived a really good life. She was going to be 88 in August. She lived a full, over the top, wonderful life. So some people, can look at it that way. And she has Alzheimer's. She had Alzheimer's, excuse me. And so in some ways, she was very blessed to have not had it go into the full out, not knowing who I was. We were very close, and she had moments where she wasn't recognizing me. But in some ways, that's another, you try to go through the list of what was positive, what was negative, and it's never, positive to lose someone. But to know she's in a better place and didn't have to go so far over the edge to the point where she absolutely didn't know me. So that was a very positive thing in all of it.
Mm.
But I will say this, it's always the same. No one ever, when they're about to pass, ever worries about, you know, what they didn't do enough. It's always about, oh my gosh, did I live my life? Did I was I passionate? Did I love passionately? Did I do enough to help other people? I mean, it really puts you in a frame of mind where you have to regroup and say, okay, I don't want to be on my deathbed. I want to make sure I'm doing all of those things right now. I want to make sure that when I meet someone, I really see them for who they are and reach out to them, because you just never know who could be in need. And it's really shifted my perspective.
So, if we may, can we talk about grief real quick? Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
I'm in it. I am deep in it for
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious what the grief process has been looking like for you and how you've been, maybe taking care of yourself or maybe navigating having to appear and put yourself out there in one way while privately dealing with such a big event.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, I'm the tough one, right? I'm the one that everybody comes to when they're going through their stuff. And I love being that girl. I really do. And that's who I've always been. And I've never really had to say, oh my gosh, I might need help or I might need something. And I found out that when I was going through this hospice process, and I took lead on the hospice, that meant I actually stayed and slept in memory care next to my mother. I never left her side. And I'm the one who had to give her the medicine and all of that. And I broke the cardinal rule of caregiving, and that was I didn't take care of me.
Mm.
And to anybody who's out there, it's really interesting because hospice told me that a lot of times that the loved one who's going through and going through the dying process will wait until their loved one finally goes and gets some rest to pass, so it's not traumatic on them. And so I think I was just be damned. I was going to be there, And I did leave finally. My husband came in and said, "Okay, you're going to fall apart. You're going to collapse," and I was. And we drove to the hotel, and I got a phone call saying her breathing had changed. I mean, we drove 100 miles an hour in Scottsdale. It was so lucky we didn't get pulled over, and we got there in time. And I did get to see her and say those last few words, which was really great. But I have to tell you, it is so different when you're the one that's supposed to be like totally cool and have it all worked out, and you've got a book that's out and it's about changing your life. And I'm out there going, okay, this is great. And I'm like, oh no, I'm I'm grieving. How do I just put it out there? So I appreciate you letting me be real today because I could have done the other, but I would have been really exhausted at the end of it.
Yeah, no, this is great. I thank you
Mhm.
so much. So it's been a few weeks now. Like, how are you navigating this? Like, I know that, you're currently sitting on the beach in Malibu, or, at your home
Yeah.
overlooking the ocean in Malibu, kind of trying to recharge a little bit. But, how are you kind of navigating your heart during this time?
Well, you have good moments and you have bad moments, and people call and they want to talk about it, and you go through it, and again you kind of put on that, oh my goodness, this is I can do this. And then I couldn't find my ring and I lost my watch and and different things would happen that I would find like it was okay to cry about, you know. And then I would completely lose it. And my poor husband, God bless him, he's so precious. And he's just like, honey, you're not okay, are you? I said, no, I'm not okay. My mom's gone. And he's like, I knew it. I knew it. And I just have had such a tough time letting go. And at the same time, because she died of Alzheimer's, in the process, of Alzheimer's, um, like not even 8 days after I had committed to Maria Shriver, who I adore, who has moved for Minds. And in Dallas, I needed to be there. And so I thought, okay, wait, I've got to get it together, put some makeup on, and get out there. And yet that turned out to be a very positive thing because I got to talk about what's important about it, and how every 66 seconds a new mind is receiving Alzheimer's. And we don't know why yet. And two-thirds of them are women, by the way. And there's so many things that we can do that I feel like my grief and what I'm going through and living in memory care, which is a pretty scary thing when you see what happens to the mind in Alzheimer's, it really kind of snaps you to it, to get a grip and to get the message out there, because we're all going to deal with this on some level at some point, whether it's a friend or a parent or a loved one. It's a very intense thing. So I think I'm using my time to kind of understand it better. I went paleo. I've taken sugar out of my diet. All the things that I can do so that I don't get Alzheimer's. Because when I lost my ring, I thought, oh no, it's starting, right?
Oh.
This is how it starts. You lose your ring, and then it's like, no, Mom, it's not that. It's just you're grieving. You're not thinking about every little thing, and you just need to go with it. So I'm trying to be kind to myself. I've been enjoying, a nice glass of wine or a little tequila here and there, and just kicking back and listening to the ocean.
Mm.
So if you have maybe some words of wisdom for someone who may be going through their own grieving cycle, what's something that you would suggest or recommend? Maybe not something to do, but just some words of wisdom or guidance for them.
Well, the first thing is to be kind to yourself and to understand that you do need to go through the process. It doesn't mean you're a weak person. I've had to fight with that and wrestle that one myself. It means that you have lost someone important to you, and that's a big deal. And it's going to come in waves. and some days are going to be good and some days are going to be bad, and something might trigger a memory. Food is another thing that becomes important when you're in this. But, a memory will happen. Like, I was sitting here looking out at the ocean, and I remembered all my vacations as a child, you know, growing up, because we always went from Scottsdale. It was so hot in Scottsdale, to the beach. So, in some ways, it's very reminiscent to be looking at the ocean and remembering those times too. So, it's about embracing them and not trying to push them out of you, because that's the worst thing you can do, is pretend like you're not hurting. So just embrace it and take that energy and say, what am I not doing in my life? What do I need to do to live a really passion filled life, so that when my time comes, hopefully a very long time from now, whatever that is, that I can, really embrace and be thankful for the life that I led. And so I think that that's one of the most important things we can do.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Oh my gosh.
I like have, Thais and I both been studying your book and are all like prepared. Now I'm like, I don't even really want to talk about I mean, we can talk
Oh,
about the book,
no,
but I'm
but
like,
you know what? It's all connected, it's so connected. The things that are helping me through this here at the beach, even though we're just renting this house, we don't own it, but I still find myself saying, I need to have fresh flowers. The first thing I did was go to the grocery store and buy a big, huge bag of oranges and lemons and grapefruits, and I put them in big, beautiful bowls in my kitchen, and hot, hot orange, beautiful, full of energy flowers, and put them in vases and my favorite candle, and I created an environment that was healing for me, especially in a rental when you're coming into a space that might not be uniquely yours. By taking the things that are so easy, like I packed up my beautiful orange throws that I had in another room, and I picked up a few things too, and I chose orange because of the energy that it has. And for me, it's a very energetic color, and it's healing because it's got warmth to it. So it gives me both what I need, warmth and energy. And I even bought orange towels. My husband's all excited because they're the color of his football team, University of Tennessee. And as I look out the window here on the chaise lounges, even though they're kind of older and beat up, I've rolled very inexpensive towels from Amazon, rolled up $14 beach towels, and they're rolled up and they look beautiful, and they've made those dingy old, chaise lounges really come to life. So I do believe in what I talk about in this book and my other books, and I do, without even thinking about it, go immediately to what I'm comfortable with, and that's experiencing my senses. Whether you're in a joyful time, a grieving time, a loving time, a family time, whatever it is, you need to create an environment that is warm, and embraces you no matter what, and that's turning on the music as well. So
yeah,
all of these things, it's visual, it's all the senses. We learn about that as a child. We learn about our eyes and ears and nose, and all of the things, the smell, the visual, the audible, all of these things. They are there for a reason. God created us so we could really take in life. And you would be amazed, you guys, how many people don't put a fire in their fireplace. They don't buy themselves flowers. And I'm not talking about spending thousands of dollars. I'm talking about going to Rouse, for goodness sake. You can buy yourself, a big batch of flowers for like 12 bucks, or a farmer's market, and bringing these things in, and creating an environment that's yours.
yeah. I love talking about this idea of using sensory aspects
Mhm.
in the healing
Absolutely.
process. And I
Yes.
think I love that you brought in, not just color, but with the citrus, like, the smell and the taste and the sights and all of these things to really support you. So I'm a Taurus. I'm a very much a Taurus,
Ah,
and external environments are like everything to me. When I moved into my
that's
house,
good.
Tice was like, I don't understand. Like, I refurnished everything. I got rid of all of my old stuff and got all new stuff. And then at one point, she was like, oh, I know why you filled your home the way you did with all the sensory things that you did, because you're a Taurus and like you need that stuff. It's like it's like a sense of safety to me to have this sensory experience in my my personal space.
Well, and that's so good that you know that. And the truth is, Everybody needs it, but you are in tune with it because of that. But we're trying to also let people know that they need to have that same passion that you normally have. And if unless they're taught it at a young life or understand it, they're missing it, you know? And they're just going home and throwing the groceries in the refrigerator and putting their feet up. They never turn on the music. They never even light their candles. I'm talking about every income bracket out there, they all do the same thing. Or if they're single, they're like, well, I'll wait until I'm in a relationship. And I'm thinking, no, what's wrong with you? This is your life right now. You need to do this for you because you are the most important person that will ever step foot into your home. And they just look at me like, oh, I never thought of that, you know.
Well,
And so
and even adding an additional layer to this, something that I teach um, my women who are leaders and who are wanting to run their own events, uh, and they're talking, talking about, like, let's say leading a workshop, is that the more that you include sensory things into the workshop, the more likely people are going to remember the content that you shared.
oh my
And
gosh, absolutely.
how they felt. And so one particular experience I had is I went to this 3-day conference about 2 years ago, and she made music be a very important element of the experience. And at the time I was like, okay, more woo woo songs, like not a big deal. But I liked some of them. Some of them are catchy. So I downloaded them on my way from the conference. And to this day, if any of those songs play on my playlist, I get immediately drawn back to where I was, how I was feeling, that
Hmm.
inspiration, that sense of open heartedness in the moment. It's really cool.
That's awesome. Well, music is so important. And I think we all need to have, a song that's our theme song. I think we need to have a playlist for when we get up in the morning and have energy in our house. We have
What's your
small
theme
children.
song?
Well, it changes from time to time, and I've got to pick a new one for right now. But I tend to, at this place in my life, anytime I hear something from Earth, Wind, and Fire, which is probably old for you guys, you
I know
know.
who they are.
Oh my
You
gosh!
do?
Oh my gosh! Isn't Do you remember? Isn't that one of their big songs?
Yes.
Do
Isn't that
you
when that song
remember?
starts? Yeah. Do you
Ba-na-na-na-na,
remember?
September. Da,
That's
da,
right.
ba-na-na-na-na, da-na. Oh, I love that
Yeah. Or Celebrate.
one. Mm-hmm.
Any of those songs or I mean, let's face it, even the theme from Rocky is kind of fun. When you hear an anthem song, anything like that, it gets your blood going and pumping. Anything that makes your heart happy and gives you energy, any music that makes you want to like tap your toes and start dancing, that is the song you need to incorporate in your daily life and have it playing in your car on your way to work. I mean, or when you're working out, look at the difference of having great music and how it gets you going. Or have you ever been to a big football game and all of a sudden they start playing these great songs through the
Bam,
loudspeakers?
ba-dum,
Yes, exactly.
ba-dum. I'm sorry. I'm
Exactly.
sorry. I'm sorry. You opened my mouth, and now I can't stop singing. Thanks.
No, I
Continue.
love it. No, I love it. It's so true though, right?
Well, the thing that I like about this conversation is that, yeah, we're talking about it with music, but your specialty is essentially creating the exact same thing, but with color. So, like, yeah,
Right.
it's fun to sit here and, talk, like, sing all the Earth, Wind, and Fire songs and stuff. But it's also true that, like, when you're working out, are you wearing a color that inspires you, or are you just throwing on the thing that was, like, laying on the floor? Like, when
Right.
you're decorating your bedroom, are you decorating it with a color that, invokes love and good feelings versus a color that was something that you hated as a child and is bringing back all this negative stuff.
Absolutely. Well, the truth is when we look at color, it's not just with our eyes. We do take color as a full sensory experience. So if you grew up in a home that was loving and fabulous and it was a beautiful serene blue and everything was great, then you are one lucky kid. That's awesome. But the majority of the world goes through some real reality stuff. And it could be as simple as your brother used to come and punch you in the back all the time just to drive you crazy. And his room was this really, really awful blue to you. And so every time you see that color, you don't know why you get a headache or you don't know why you don't like being around it, but it's affecting you because of that. So it's getting people to go back and understand that Yes, there are color experts in there who can tell you, and I can tell you the energies of color. Colors do stand for energy, but if you have had a negative experience that has impacted your life with a certain color, that is not the color you need to be painting your walls in your house with.
I love that. I think it's a really great perspective to take on because we don't think about how these things impact us. Like if we
No, they
had
and we don't realize that color is energy. It
yeah.
is full energy. It affects our moods, our feelings, our behaviors, everything. And if we don't get in touch with that, we are losing out. And it's just like you said, are we picking up that old thing to work out in? Well, whether you're going for powerful black, which yes, black is the color. I get so much crap from people when I'm in black. They're like, "Wait, you are the color girl." I just wore a gown to an event in Dallas, and it was black and white, which was one of my favorite combinations because of the contrast. It's like high impact, and everyone's like, "Wait a second, you're the color girl." I'm like, "Okay, let me just like preface this with black is a color, and so is white." They go, "No, it's absence of color." I said, "No, grayscale is absence of color. Grayscale, a black and white TV from the old days, which you guys would have no idea about, is that's grayscale." When we see a picture in black and white, it's not in black and white, it's in grayscale. If the picture were black and white, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Totally. So I'm curious, let's talk about your backstory. How did you kind of get to this? How did you decide to write a whole book on this? Like, where did this inspiration and love for color come into your life?
Well, it's kind of funny because this is the second of my Change Your Home, Change Your Life books out of my four. And by the way, we became a New York Times bestseller
Oh,
a couple weeks back.
congratulations.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
which was
Yay.
really exciting. I think that every author, is always hoping and praying for a moment like that. But honestly, I came by this naturally. When I started this book, I had fallen in love with color, changed everything, knocked out all the walls of our home in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I said to my husband, "I'm just craving light and I'm craving color." And I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." And he's like, "This is great. I love that." And so we were kind of going through this experience together. And I started writing the book and I was taking pictures. And then, like a month later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, "Charlie, wake up." And he's like, "What?" I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm onto something. I realized that I fell out of love with color." And he goes, "Wait, what are you talking about?" I said, "When I had gone through trauma as a child, when I was 4 or 5 and 6, I had been sexually abused by a family friend. And it was over a long period of time. And it was during that time that I realized, going back in my memory, that I had been so affected by my love of color because it completely went away. I ended up spending my teenage years and going into my adult years not only making bad choices in my life because of the things that I had gone through, but also I was known for just, wearing dark lipstick, dark hair. I had black hair. I mean, I really just didn't feel comfortable with color. I felt like if somebody put color on me, it was like I was crawling out of my skin. And I could not understand it. And people used to say to me, "Oh my gosh, you just seem to love black. That's all you wear." Well, I didn't realize it, but I literally was creating atmospheres and became very successful creating dark, seductive interiors for other people who were probably going through the same thing I was. But I literally went from house to house and was incredibly successful. But it wasn't until I started changing it and going on my journey and being open to understanding what had happened to me and how it correlated with color and started studying way, way back, trying to find anything I could. I was so hungry that I started to realize I was onto something that was actually groundbreaking, and at the same time got hints from other things through research. So there I was in the middle of a book, rewriting the book already before I even finished it. So I came by it naturally, honestly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm writing a totally different book." So we went from interior design and and decorating to self-help slash interior design for our BISAC codes.
I
It
love it.
really should be in the self-help section.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel like that almost connects the two in a more meaningful way. I feel like interior design can often feel so elusive to people, so out of touch with their budget and reality, even though that may not be the case, right? It can just feel like this air of superiority. And that you brought it kind of down to earth and making it more meaningful for people's challenges now. And I
Oh.
love that so much.
Well, thank you. I didn't always have the success in my life, and I went through so many things, and I had gone through relationships that were so negative for me, and it wasn't until that I went and did the work myself and worked through things. I mean, some people are just lucky. They meet the person that's right for them, and they are grounded in their life, and they've had all the tools, and they understand things, and they've got the stamina to work through it. You know, I had to go and work through it. It's like I always tell people, don't ever feel like you're bound by your past. And don't ever look at yourself in the mirror and say, woe is me. I have screwed up. You need to say, I have gone through everything that I needed to go through in order to become the person I am today. And it doesn't matter. I tell people whether they've been married 1,000 times, whether they've been in bad relationships 100 times, whether they've dealt with alcohol or abuse or any of the things, they are not defined by that unless they choose to be. And today is a new day, and however they live is going to be the shift. And you can always see it in people's homes, whether they really care about themselves, or whether they're putting themselves through hell by sleeping on the floor and being, and trying to make themselves feel like they are really, feeling all the anguish they should for being a bad person. And what they don't understand is they can just start over today. And you may not have a lot of money. And oh my gosh, I left several times with my small child and had to like figure it out. But no matter what I did, I could create a warm and wonderful environment for my child with nothing. I mean, whether it was just finding inexpensive, things for my home or flowers from the yard or whatever I was doing, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's just whatever you feel inside, you need to put out there and create that warmth. You can have a boom box for goodness sakes. And thank God music is so cheap today that you can have music coming off your phone.
So the thing I love about your book, one, it's beautiful. Like the second I opened the box, I was like, it's gorgeous. Like the tactily, like I said, Taurus, like the colors, the touch, the everything, like it smells good and everything. The photos are beautiful, but I love the worksheet pages.
Oh, good. The journal pages I've gotten there.
Yeah.
I really wanted this book to be interactive. I wanted people to grab it and say, I can figure this out. They don't have to like have some big appointment with somebody or any of that. Just to start the process of trying to understand things. I mean, I love just a question that's so simple is, did you have the most used crayon? What color did you have that was the most used crayon in the box? And what is it? What was it? Do you even remember? And you know what? People usually answer that one pretty quick. Or they'll say that the color they hate, they always know. They always know. And so just trying to get people to go through this and answer questions. And I wanted them to go ahead and write in the book. And it's funny, I can always tell whether people have actually read the book because they'll say, oh, it's such a beautiful table book. And I'm like, great. Oh my gosh. I said, and it's a wonderful book if you decide to read it. And they're like, oh, I'm going to.
That's awesome.
So, I wanted it to be a a lesson, and I went through this book 1,000 times and said, how do I get people to understand what I'm saying? It's like I read it over and over again. That's why I wanted my Moll's thoughts in it, and that I wanted a color lesson and a color story. And I went back and put them into each. I mean, we had to add more pages because I said, nope, it is not. It's not specific enough. I want them to understand how they can incorporate this. And so I really hope at the end of it that they'll really have an understanding of how to do some things, because there's great design advice in here, and none of it's over the top. It's all in how you see it and how you want to incorporate it into your life. So I hope that they understand all the lessons in it, because it's really important.
I
Awesome.
love it.
Yeah,
So
we're
speaking
gonna
of the book,
we're gonna put a pin in this conversation. Tyson, I just figured out this analogy. We're gonna put a pin in it, and we're gonna take it over to the extended.
we were like, do you put a fork in it? Do you put a knife in it? What do you stick in it? We had a mental fart earlier.
Yeah, it's a pin. You put a pin in it.
I
So
figured that out. I want to take complete credit for that. I am the brilliant one.
I love it.
we're putting a pin in this conversation. So tell us quick where people can find you.
Ah, They can easily find me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and my website. It's all Moll Anderson. So I don't have any weird, anything. It's just Moll at Moll Anderson.
Awesome.
And it's so easy to find, and I hope that they find me, and I hope that I love to hear from people. I want to hear their thoughts on the book and what they did understand or didn't, or I'm happy to answer questions always.
Cool.
I love
Thank
it.
you. Well, amplifiers, meet us over in our Facebook community. That is beamplified.community. We will be talking with Mal more about her color story and maybe a little bit of Thais and my color story. And Thais, do you want to tell everyone where to find us?
Yes, they can find us at The Amplify Co. on Instagram and all of the other, Facebook,
Twitter.
Twitter. I'm
All
never
the
on Twitter.
all
All
the
the,
interwebs.
yeah, everywhere that you expect us to be, we are there. But definitely in our Facebook group, beamplified.community. We look forward to seeing you there. And in the meantime, go be
Go
amplified.
go be amplified.